Welcome back. So, the next generation consoles are out, and we have had our Xboxes in the office. We've been playing video games, we've been fiddling around with the UI, having a good rummage, and mostly having a good time. Today, we're going to talk about what we think and what the actual ownership experience is like for these. Now first, most of our viewers are not subscribed, so if you want to hang around and you want to let our news team actually handle the research and all that stuff for you, then give that sub button a click. It really does help us out, and the like button helps us with that algorithm too. And with that said, let's get going. Games are the most important thing, and, well, that's where the excitement kind of falls over, right? We just have to be realistic. Going Xbox One or PC to either of these new consoles won't really give you the joy of a new next-gen experience, despite the actual setup feeling great. And the reason why is simple: the games just aren't there yet. Now that said, if you are new to Xbox, or you are new to Game Pass, then the experience will be great because you'll have a lot to do. I mean, the first thing the X did after initial setup was give us a full screen prompt to join Game Pass Ultimate for £1 single. That's a massive amount of games. And there was things like downloading Tetris Effect to play that while Destiny 2 or Gears 5 downloaded, without worrying about the cost of doing that. Well, that feels pretty damn great. Game Pass is a really solid experience. We can't really say that much more to explain just how good the value is of a new console and Game Pass here if you've not actually got that library of games, right? So that overall user experience is designed to have great value at its core, and that fundamentally will make this a brilliant option for many people. Let's talk about actually playing games. Well, it was so good compared to last gen. So firing up Forza Horizon 4K 60 FPS, it felt great, it looked great. It's pretty wild to have that in a console based on what we've come to expect. Same goes for Ori, which we ran at 120 FPS. That felt great. Now, Gears 5 co-op was still 30 FPS, but outside of that, yeah, it's hitting 60 and it looks and just runs great on the X. The problem, though, is we've not really had a true next-gen experience yet, have we? I mean, that said, if Gears 5 is anything to go by, then they are going to look incredible, and in terms of the feel, yes, they should feel absolutely fantastic. Sort of like that experience that PC gamers like myself with a good setup have, where just about all your games run really well and play smoothly. So yes, it should be great gaming without the usual console downsides: frame timing, iffy frame rates, input latency, and far too many things being 30 FPS. No, you're going to have consistent frame rates, you're going to have super fast loading, no super lengthy install processes. Yeah, the core feel is that those shackles that made the last two console generations feel annoying all the time, those are lifted. Look, as PC gamers, many of us have been used to this stuff for a long time, but for the consoles, this stuff is all incredible. And in fairness, some of the loading times experienced do feel truly incredible. Overall then, the experience of using the Series X is just great. It really is. The same can then almost be said for the Series S. The easier to run games like Ori, they can do 4K 60 or 1080 120. That's great, looks great, feels great. But the S very much is the little brother of the X, right? And that's fair, it is cheaper. But the problem is the newer titles are already showing limitations for the S. Assassin's Creed Valhalla, well, that runs at 1440p, 30 FPS. There is not a 1080p 60 FPS mode. That is very, very disappointing if you want a smooth gameplay experience. Then Devil May Cry 5, well, that has no ray tracing support at all on the Series S. Now, this is not a great start given how Microsoft insisted that it would basically be the same gameplay experience, but just at a lower resolution than 4K. It really doesn't seem like that's going to be the case across the board. It hopefully will be the case for first-party titles, but it's clearly not guaranteed for third parties. And then, of course, time will pass, right? What will this be like in 5 years? To be honest, for the S, I doubt it will be solid. Now, for backwards compatibility, though, yeah, it's a great backwards compatibility box that lets you play a whole bunch of past-gen games and, of course, a whole bunch of, not really next-gen anymore, is it? It's current-gen games. Next then, the storage. This is the issue. The Series S's 364 gigs feels extremely limiting, while the Series X's usable 800 gigs doesn't really feel like a problem. Now, sure, 2 games is not going to fill the Series S completely, but if you play 1 or 2 live service games that you'll always want to have installed, or you perhaps revisit games often, then yes, you'll be doing a lot of uninstalling and reinstalling on that basic amount of storage you get with the S. Now, you can fork out more money for the proprietary Xbox Velocity architecture storage that is done with Seagate, but that's going to cost you a lot of money. Now, basically, I hope you've got fast internet. That's the TLDR here. You can deal with a small amount of storage space if you can download big games very quick, but if you can't, it's going to be annoying. Still though, for playing a small handful of modern console games at maybe 1080-60 or 1440p 60, it is a better experience than basically anything else that you can buy. Now, how many games will run that well into the future for this box? Very hard to tell, impossible to tell. And to be honest, I'm not particularly hopeful given just how performance goes, right? Generally, and how it has done in the past. Now, there is an elephant in the room here for both consoles, and that just is the lack of new games to play. With next-gen offerings being sparse, that has meant that backwards compatibility really is the saving grace here. And backwards compatibility is great, but great backwards compatibility gameplay experiences are not particularly great. If you're gaming in a PC, you put a new graphics card in, and now your games are running at 60 FPS and you're happy. But for us, well, Darksiders 3 was one example, and it was a massively disappointing one that shows something that does happen. It's locked at 30 FPS on the Xbox Series S and X, actually. But it runs at 60 FPS on a PS4 Pro. And that's not because of the power of the hardware or anything, that's just what is supported in its backwards compatibility mode. Now yes, increased load times and a more smooth 30 FPS, that is good, but clearly the developer support on a very broad basis is just not there to bring all of the games up to snuff, so that their backwards compatibility modes actually feel a lot better to play. Matt, instead, is playing Darksiders 3 on his aging GTX 970 1440p 60 with similar load times and with the controller of his choice, where he's been able to bind his spare buttons on the controller to media controls. And that's the thing where it's like, say what you want about PC being a bit fiddly sometimes, but, you know, developer or mod support does just make it king. And it's not just Darksiders 3, that's a lot of our point. As of the time of writing, which is around the launch of the console, only 14 games on Game Pass are optimized for these new consoles, and none of them are actually new games. That's not great. So as a PC gamer, that does mean the launch is really, really underwhelming. And as a console gamer, yes, some of your familiar experiences will be a lot upgraded. They'll be running at 60 FPS, higher res, all that stuff. But a lot of them are just going to be running in backwards compatibility at pretty much the same, but a bit more consistent than you will expect. So overall, at launch, we're at a situation where we have these genuinely fantastic bits of hardware for the price, but there's just not really that much to play, and that is a problem. Still though, as a platform that is aimed at value, yes, you can play all of your current Xbox favorites, all of your old library and anything on Game Pass. That is fantastic. We just hope that the backwards compatibility optimization gets better, such that loads of those old games run at a solid 60 or 120, because if they do, then that will really make this feel like a far better experience. But right now, it is sad that so few of the backwards compatibility games are actually running in a more optimized state. Moving past the games, the general user experience of both these consoles is just great. You have an updated and highly responsive UI that removes a huge pain point from previous consoles where it would just feel a bit sluggish. And yeah, that UI, it is functional, it is fast, it is a bit ugly though. Now in fairness, I've never liked Microsoft's design language for UIs, but yeah, it all works pretty well, it does feel real slick. Now do keep in mind that here we have fast internet that is also very reliable, so our download times are very good, we don't have data caps, and DRM doesn't really cause issues for us. But according to some users though, there are issues with online DRM, even with disks and the online only setup. Now, I've seen this be called a return to the Xbox One's horrific launch DRM. So this could mean that if you want to buy games on disc and then play them without worrying about the internet, then this just is not going to be great for you. You see, installing from a disc only really installs a tiny amount of the video game in question, with the rest being downloaded. It actually means the discs are almost a moot point. I mean, there's an example where Assassin's Creed Valhalla installs 900 megabytes from the disc and then just downloads the rest. What does going gold even mean these days when that's the situation we're living in? Yeah, it seems like you'll have to pretty much update every game before you can actually play them from the disc, which to a lot of people is not going to be a great experience. Okay, let's take a little break away from that and move over to the consoles themselves, like the literal things. Size and appearance is interesting. The X is a dense, no-nonsense brick of gaming hardware. It's actually pretty clean looking. I think it's unobtrusive, even though it's big enough. Basically, I think it's going to look well and fit well in most people's home setups. It doesn't really go out there like the PS5 does. The S is a little bit more noticeable in terms of design, but I think the key is just how small it is. Now, it's dense enough to not feel like a cheap thing. It does feel premium in your hand, but it's shockingly small and it looks great. Sure, white is a riskier move, especially with the centerpiece black vent, but I really do think the S looks great. Now, on heat and noise, well, even idle, they both do expel warm air, of course, that's what the vent will be doing, and they barely make a sound. And what's interesting is that under load, that sound didn't noticeably get louder, right? That's a lot better than current gen, I'll say that much. And overall, really, we've just came a long way as far as product experience goes over the last decade, and it shows. These look better, they run better, they're really good units of hardware. Yeah, it's a pretty good experience. Now, as for the controller, it is not a radical departure from things like the DualSense of the PS5 is, but it is a really good incremental improvement. The bumpers, the D-pad buttons, and the options buttons have all got a more pronounced and satisfying click, which is obviously good. It's got this textured grip as well in the back that feels really good. I just love holding this controller. Everything else, though, is mostly the same, but just a sort of small step up in, I guess, like QC, quality, I suppose. Now, that said, the D-pad is not ideal for platformers or for fighters, so there is that. And also, AA batteries. I mean, come on, that feels like a relic of the past. So, should you actually buy one? Well, our verdict here is actually pretty damn simple. Consoles have, right now, caught up with PC, and they've caught up really well. You see, in the past, right, with the last gen, yes, the consoles were a pretty good value for money at the time, but they weren't really up there. And I think that relatively speaking, these consoles are holding far more of a candle to PC than the Xbox One and the PS4 did at their time of launch. And that does make me feel better about the longevity of the X and the PS5. So I'll say that across the board. I mean, look, fundamentally here, at launch, you're getting consistent and high frame rates at high resolutions, and you're getting load times that are so short, you basically won't get distracted. You're getting really good value offerings with Game Pass in this case, and you're getting great backwards compatibility for all your previously owned games, right? Now you get not ideal backwards compatibility next-gen optimization, but you do get great backwards compatibility. Now the Series X, as far as the sort of games are concerned, is basically like an exceptionally well-priced mid-range gaming PC. The visuals this thing pumps out for the amount of money that it costs is just bonkers, and the same will go for the PS5 as well. That's generally great. For now though, should you get it? Well, there's not going to be that much in the way of exciting new games to play on it, and the thing is, you won't really want to get it if you already have, say, a gaming PC. So yeah, it's a sort of thing where this is really only worth an upgrade if you are not somebody that would own a PC, or if you never want the PC form factor, or don't want to pay that much money for a PC. I don't know, maybe you've got a MacBook and that's just all you want for, a computing device? Hard to tell. But that's the thing. PC is going to get all the same games, your PC is going to do more things, and it can be upgraded over time. That's not the case for the X. The X is really there for people who do not want a gaming PC, but they do want really good top-class feeling performance, and I think for those people, this is a really good purchase, right? As for the Series S, it's weird. We could only suggest the Series S maybe if you really badly want a Game Pass box right now while you save up for a really good gaming PC. The Series S is a good experience, but it's, I think, not a great investment because it's at the very start of a new generation and it's already behind in a few games. And I think that's just going to be more and more noticeable as time goes on, right? Now, it does boast genuinely very impressive performance for $300, but here's the thing. It costs, $24.99 US with Game Pass bundled in if you're getting Xbox All Access. The Series X does cost another $10 a month with All Access. And to be honest with you, I think if you could make that stretch to get the X on All Access instead of the S, I think that would be better because I think the X is not really going to feel obsolete as fast as this one will. And really, it is just the poor man's shoes problem in console form. Now, there are great use cases here for kids or maybe as a secondary console, but beyond that, right, the $200 saving for the Series S versus the X, I just don't think it's worth it considering what's really going on and the advantages of the X, because it's almost worth it in terms of the storage alone, right? The X has got 800 gigs usable, the S has got 360. You'll have to upgrade your S's storage at some point anyway. And that's not even counting how the X will be running games at top spec for many more years. And the fact that the X will support discs, which means that you will have a bit more competition and a bit more in terms of options for purchasing games, which will probably decrease your lifetime cost of ownership for the device. Still, if you want an incredible amount of bang for your buck right the hell now, not really thinking to the future, then yes, what you get for $300 is pretty damn great. At the end of the day, and I'm glad to say this, next gen is here. It's not here in terms of the video games you can play, but the hardware and the user experiences do feel like a large step up from what we've been used to on the Xbox One X and the PS4 Pro. Sadly though, if you're a PC gamer, it's just going to feel incremental. But that's fine. This stuff is mostly for the console team anyway. This basically is a situation where it feels like console games are games that can actually be played on consoles in a really good state, right? You know, it's like take really any game, you know, and on a console it's not going to have the best frame timings. It'll run at 30 FPS. It'll have extremely long loading times. That sucks. But coming from PC, it sucks. Absolutely. That doesn't happen anymore in the console realm. So that is a point of parity between console and PC that has now been met. And that has unlocked a far better console gaming experience for everybody who is going to be, well, you know, playing in consoles. So I think this stuff is absolutely great for the X and the S. And as for the PS5, we will have ours next week. So stay tuned to see if the same is true for the PS5 next week. That is it for us. I hope you found this to be useful. I think rather than going through spec sheets and all of that stuff, I mean, hey, you can go look at Digital Foundry if you want that. We wanted to focus more on the ownership experience and what it's actually like to get one of these things now. So there you go. That's our thoughts. Let me know what you think about these consoles. Have you got them with you right now? If so, do let us know. And yeah, that's it for me. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time.